if you want to start a business and you have anxiety, go for it.
Transition towards the business days, and that's when I was with you more, so I kind of started to see that. Now, when we transitioned towards that time, would you say that it started happening more?
If you know anything really about anxiety, is caffeine worsens it, right? So now I'm tired from all the anxiety because it drained me. And then I'm taking extra caffeine to wake myself back up, and I'm putting myself in this perpetual cycle.
When it happened in high school, do you know like what the cause of it was at that time? All right, so in this video, we're gonna talk about I think, important topic, which would be business and anxiety, because you go through this basically on a daily basis, right? And I think there are so many business owners out there that deal with this every single day, but they don't even want to talk about it. On top of it, I think there are a lot of people that want to start businesses that are too scared because they go through the same thing, right? Their anxiety kicks in maybe even the moment they start thinking about starting a business. So in this episode, we're going to kind of talk about how you deal through that, with that, and what you maybe do to, I guess, deal with it on a daily basis. So let's start with maybe you sharing your story, how you started a business, and when you first discovered this, and when it started happening.
So it's been happening, I would say, consistently since extreme anxiety, since high school. And I just thought it was, normal, I guess. I didn't really share it with anybody because I was like weird about it. Maybe not weird about it, just never really thought much into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And having parents come from I'm first generation born here, right? Both my parents came from Poland, and my mom had full custody of me and my sister. When it came to doctor's visits, it was very like, if you absolutely need it, you're going, or if it's like a mandatory checkup, right? Anything in between, you're fine. Rub some dirt on it, Polish joke, drink some Amol, and
the tough mentality, right?
Yeah, tough it out. You're fine. They came from very harsh times. So it's like, you got it easy here. You can deal with it.
Right.
And for me, it was years of stress built up from my parents' divorce and other things in that, which I believe added to me having it. Because if I think back, first, second grade, you don't really have, you would be kind of shocked to hear a kid that young having that, right? Them dealing with emotions is one thing, but having stress and anxiety that young is kind of unheard of. But then when I started to think about it more after the divorce, third, fourth, fifth, I did see a shift in myself change. And I did experience those things. Now knowing what I know as an adult, I did have that. But I never really shared it with anybody because of, in a very short amount of time, I went through a lot of therapists, psychologists, stuff like that. It was like over a dozen before I hit sixth grade. So I had a lot of different people telling me things, a lot contradicting each other, and I just didn't know who to believe anymore. So I just bottled it up. And then middle school, high school, I was big into sports, so I just used sports as an outlet. And then whenever I was dealing with something, I would hide it to the best that I could. And then high school was a little bit harder, focusing and stuff like that. And then college came, same thing there. And then the first time I was hospitalized for panic was in high school. And I stayed 3 days at a children's hospital here in the city.
Did they know it was no?
They didn't. They couldn't figure it out because there was one. When I went there the first time, I was in the emergency room, and they heard that, a young male in high school, chest pain, trouble breathing, and pain in his arm. They were like, "Oh my God, like, too young to have a heart attack, but still, these are kind of symptoms that are presenting as that." And this was 2009, 10-ish. So before the whole shift of like mental health that it is now, right? So when I'm in the ER, they were putting an IV in or whatever. And during that, I've been fine with needles. Like, I've gotten shots and stuff. That was never an issue. But as they were doing that, I remember talking to one of the nurses, and then next thing I know, I'm being like shook awake, right? By like half a dozen nurses, half a dozen doctors screaming, running around. I see faintly, a nurse pulling my mom out of the room, and she's sobbing. And it was like, the hell's going on? Well, I fainted, and they were saying like that I was talking to the nurse, and then out of nowhere, like, my words started not making sense, and then I slurred, and then I crashed and I fell over. And that little episode freaked everybody out. And that was when it really took their attention away from, okay, maybe this could be anxiety, to there might be a bigger issue here. Mm-hmm. So then I was admitted there and then transferred to the children's hospital here. They ran every test, EKGs, all this stuff, heart related and not heart related, and couldn't find anything. So they just kept telling me to go, see this specialist, see that specialist. Finally, I was like, I'm enough of this, And then college happened a couple times in college, and then we started business. You remember, we lived together, and it happened 2 or 3 more times. And then finally,
the significant ones,
the ones that put me in the hospital, where it would be like, we would be fine talking, laughing, go to the gym, come back, fine, and then out of nowhere, I'm violently throwing up and like sick and all this crazy stuff. So those would land me in the hospital. And then the final one, my dad took me, and we're waiting in the emergency room for like 8 or 9 hours. And everybody was kind of like just glossing over me. And this was 2018.
2017,
so 2018.
24 maybe.
Yeah, right around there.
Because
me and Jess were already seeing each other. So I think it was fall or winter of 2018. And we were there for a long time, and my dad was getting really annoyed with everybody. He was like, why is nobody paying attention, this and that. It was a very busy, hectic day in Chicago, so the emergency room was very full. And as annoyed as I was, and my dad was at the time, for them like brushing over me, one doctor or nurse was very kind of calculated with it, and was smart. No, I wouldn't say calculated, just knew. He kind of saw it and was like, all right, let's see if it changes, if he gets worse in the first 30 minutes. Nothing. I think they gave me ibuprofen or something. And then 9 hours later, and like there was really, my anxiety was high, but the pain was kind of gone in the arm, and like the tightness was a little less, you know, it was just really anxious. And he came in and he was like, you know, sorry, it's been a crazy day, blah, blah, blah. And my dad looks at him, he's like, do you know what, like, you guys have barely done anything? Like, he's like, I already know, I've known since like after the first hour, basically. Like it was confirmed to me. And he basically was like, yeah, you had a panic attack. My dad looked at him like he was going to kill him. He's like, there's no way that it's just, my son doesn't have anxiety and panic. And I kind of sat with it for like 5 to 10 seconds, kind of chuckled to myself. I was like, wow, I can't believe I didn't see this sooner. My dad looked at me and I was like, Dad, don't get mad with them. I'm like, it makes sense. I'm like, I'm not upset by it. I'm like, I'm glad it's that now, versus a heart problem, you know?
100%. Why do you think this doctor figured it out versus the other instances, especially the one in high school?
Because the first one in high school was the first instance of it, right? Now, when I went to the last one, which was 6th or 7th time I was hospitalized for it, kind of gave that background to them and they knew. The guy just put it together real quickly. And funny enough, when I left the hospital, I was kind of nervous to tell Jess about it. But then finally when I did, she's like, oh yeah, I figured. I knew. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, you know, she's in nursing school. And she's like, well, I know other people who have dealt with this. And she's like, just from the stuff you've told me and what I've kind of observed from you too. She's like, I knew. I'm like, well, why didn't you say anything? She's like, well, I don't know. I felt like it wasn't her place to say it because it was so early on. And she's like, I didn't know how you would react also from me saying it. So
when it happened in high school, do you know like what the cause of it was at that time? Like they wouldn't tell you, but you maybe.
Probably just stress.
Just stress?
It was just stress of, I don't remember exactly what I was, when it happened, it was like 6 p.m. and I was doing homework. And my mom walked by and I was holding my chest, like bent over on my desk, like.
So some kind of form of stress.
Some form of stress or like past stress, like overlying like mental stress that I've just been baggage carrying around on top of whatever stress I had as of recent within the last week.
Yeah. Why I'm asking is because now we're going to slowly start to transition towards the business days. And that's when I was with you more. So I kind of started to see that. Now, when we transition towards that time, would you say that it started happening more?
1,000,000%. It went from in high school happening maybe once a week, you know, not to that extent, hospitalization extent, but like heavy, you know, anxiety and stuff like that.
Once a week. When was this?
In high school.
In high school. Okay.
Maybe not even that frequent. I'd say once a month. Right. And then when we got into business, it was daily. It was daily up like, and not even just daily, it was all day long. Like at one point.
The day we started, pretty much, or a little bit
I wouldn't say the day we started. No, I would say maybe about a year in where money wasn't coming in from the first venture we were doing. And then, you know, I just got into my head. I'm like, well, shit, you know, like, it's not working out as fast as I thought it would. I'm a college dropout. You know, I don't have any real world experience opposed to other people, you know. So it just started there and snowballed more and more and more. And
yeah, because in high school, it was like, okay, you were having fun most of the time on a daily basis, right?
Right.
Playing with your friends, doing sports like you were mentioning.
Right.
And then it probably happened like once per week when you started to think about
A project or midterms,
exactly.
finals, crap like that.
Exactly. And then business came in, first year, all excited, right? You don't
Right.
know what you're doing. You don't know where like what you're getting yourself into. And then all of a sudden, a year in, all the things that we were talking about doing, none of it is panning out, right? So now you're probably starting to think about all these things. And that's where all those situations came in where you were actually having panic attacks, maybe not to that extreme where you ended up to at the hospital, but you were still feeling it. Now, those feelings, how did that feel like every single day? What does it feel like?
I mean, the ones that put me in the hospital, I honestly...
The smaller ones, not the ones
the
at
smaller
the hospital ones.
The smaller ones were just, like physically jumpy leg, constant picking, internally defeated, tired, very tired. It's very draining. So I would counteract that, which is crazy, with 4, 5, 6 cups of coffee, which, if you know anything really about anxiety, is caffeine worsens it, right? So now I'm tired from all the anxiety because it drained me. And then I'm taking extra caffeine to wake myself back up, and I'm putting myself in this perpetual cycle of making it worse and then tiring myself out and then this and then that. So that was tough. But once I got diagnosed, I was like, okay, it's manageable. We could figure it out now that we know what it is. If
you could work on it now.
Right. It was a lot harder before not knowing. At one point I was like, I remember telling you, like 6 months in, I'm like, honestly, part of me wished that I did have something wrong with my heart and it wasn't the panic disorder and the extreme anxiety, because if it was, let's say, a valve or something in my heart that you go in, you get it fixed, and then it's done.
Could
it's
be
over.
that easy, at least
Right.
You'd hope.
And that's what I thought at the time. I was like, I would rather have something wrong be physically, where they could just do the surgery and cut it out and fix it, versus having to deal with this every day, because it was such a pain in the ass. I think about it differently now because I use it as a learning experience. Like you said, I still deal with it every day. It's still tough.
Yeah, so let's talk about after you found out, because I think that's going to be the most important part for anybody that actually is listening. Maybe they thought they have it. It's confirmed. They know they have it. So now how do you deal with it? And I guess let's go in that direction.
After I found out, I dove in head first. Kind of taking what we did with business. You don't wait. You just attack head on and figure it out as you go, right? So I immediately went on 4 different medications. I had 4 different doctors that I was seeing, my regular general practitioner, a family health one, a psychiatrist, and then a 4th. And I was doing that for about a year or 2, changing the medication from time to time. And that was also not great, because you go from 0 medications to now 4 medications with 4 different doctors figuring things out, trying to help you change your life. And I'm trying to change it as fast as possible. But with medications, you got to give it time to adapt to yourself and allow those changes. It's some Adderall, you feel the effects right away, right? But other ones take longer. Antidepressants were in there too. So, because I was diagnosed clinically with depression. So it was just so much at once that would I have done that again? No. That's one thing that I would have changed. I wouldn't have gone in that fast and made that many changes that quickly because it altered my personality a lot with the medications, and it just made daily life that much harder on top of starting and running a business.
So when you found out you were taking these medications and you were doing business every day, because was it at the time where we were working every day? I think so, right?
It was. It was
every hour of the day, pretty
14-hour
much.
days. Yeah.
How did it feel at that time? Like, where were you mentally?
Drained. It was hard. It was really hard to get through. Just because I didn't know how long it would take to fix, and if there was kind of an end in sight with dealing with it. But having you and Jess and other people around me to like help me through it, that was key. Because if I were to do it alone, who knows? So
would you quit business at that point if you were alone?
Honestly, if I was alone, I would have. Because it would have been too much to take on alone. Because I know that when I was dealing with that and I was stepping away, things were getting delayed that I was doing. And you were kind of picking some of that stuff up. And then, yeah, if it wasn't for that, then it would get delayed. If I was alone, it would get delayed until a point where I'd be like, I'm too far gone.
I remember you were telling me back then that even like talking to someone, right, a customer or something like that would get you anxious, right? So tell me a little bit about things like that. Well,
I remember, and this isn't even business related. This is when I was still working at Nona Silvia's, delivering. I remember we were semi-busy that night. Nothing crazy, but not really slow. And I remember feeling sick going up to deliver this guy's pizza, and after he took the pizza at the door, I ended up throwing up in his bushes.
I remember that.
That's how bad that was. And then another instance, like several months later, I was coming back and it was slow. Was not a good night. Money wasn't great. And I think that was what triggered that panic attack, where I started thinking about finances and was freaking out. Went to the restaurant, locked myself in one of the bathrooms, not in the restaurant where customers, but for us, for the workers, like in another room. And I was in there for like 15 minutes just throwing up. So dealing with it within business is super hard in that sense. Bringing it to, that was just, like I said, delivering. And now business-wise, I'd be not even on a demo call in the early days when I still handled those, which that was not even long lasted because that kind of came at the same, 6 months after I was diagnosed, where we started to do the demo calls. It ended up being like a month where I did the demo calls, and I was like, I just can't handle it, because they would ask me a question, and instead of being like, you know what, let me look into it, I would freeze up, freak out, and they'd be like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Same with emails. Like, I would send something, and one portion would either be misspelled or said wrong, and I could have a customer who was not having a great day themselves come back and be like, you're an idiot. That would send me in a tailspin.
Right. And I think also on top of it, you started in the, the worst possible industry and the hardest business I think there is to start dealing with all the stuff that you were dealing with, right? Because I'm not 100% sure because I don't know what it feels like to have anxiety or anything like that. That's where I kind of don't understand apart from what you tell me, right?
I'll say this. I believe everybody in the world has the feeling of anxiousness. It's just their peaks. Everybody's peaks are different. My peaks get a lot higher. There's a lot more room, or lower, I guess. It depends on how you look at it. It's like my peak, I can handle only so much in some aspect where I like hit the top, and it's like that's where the freak out comes. Whereas other people can handle a lot more and it doesn't happen.
I mean, I think so, and it
And
probably
then people
is.
don't panic. They get anxious, like certain things can make them anxious, but they don't have panic attacks.
Right. I mean, the closest thing that maybe I could relate to is the times where you can't sleep. And it's like, for me, it's only if I think I have a great idea that I just cannot go to sleep because I'm like constantly thinking about it, right? That's the only times that, from what you described to me, I feel like maybe I have some of that, but that's a whole completely different thing, right?
Yeah. It's more excited anxiousness than
Right.
scared and worried.
Right. So, yeah, that's why it's so hard for me to ever relate. And that's probably also maybe coming from a different background. That's where it kind of, I guess, always starts, right? That's why it started for you when you were younger, and you figured it out eventually
And
what it
that's
was.
another thing too with having like childhood trauma that was never worked through up. I'm like, I just started going to therapy a couple months ago again. And I'm just really now starting to go through that so that I could really work on the underlying stuff, because I was working after I got diagnosed, getting the medication and those 4 doctors, I was dealing with the top line stuff, the stuff that was in the very recent present, and I was kind of just masking it. Whereas I needed to go kind of back and find the deeper issues, work through those, and bring that into how it's like how I'm dealing with it now in everyday life.
Right. Okay. So, I guess my next question is, do you think that someone that's dealing with what you dealt with should start a business? Or let me maybe ask you this, because like I mentioned earlier, you did start in the, I think, craziest industry you could start, which is software, right? You have to spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of testing to even get to a point where you can,
It's viable.
right, people can use it, people can buy it, which is like, for all that time, you're not making any money. Now, there are other businesses that you can start making money right away. That are much easier. And that's what a lot of people, us included, always say. Like, if it's your first business, you're not experienced whatsoever, these are the businesses that you should probably start doing, right? Because they will bring money right up front. And it will just be so much easier for a person that is inexperienced. And so I guess my question with that, do you think that if we did a different business together where you would see money coming in faster, quicker, do you think that would have changed anything?
No, because with what I deal with now in my anxiety and panic attacks is imposter syndrome. Where we're at now with the podcast, the business, several other businesses that we're starting, and doing. I wake up every day, I'm like, it's not real. I didn't do anything. It's kind of a blur the last 6-7 years. Like, I don't remember all the 14-hour days that we put in. It's just like it kind of jumped in a sense where I'm like I'm almost quiet and shy in telling people what I do when they ask, because I feel like I'm not really a part of it. I see you and Vivek as the ones that did it all. And I see myself as like just not there, and I feel very fake about it. So if the money came in faster, the imposter syndrome would have just came faster. And that's, again, going back to the underlying traumas that I had before and trying to figure out all that stuff and handling that, because it's just constant things that were said and done to me that broke me down and put me into a place where I don't believe in myself that I'm good enough to be who I am and that I did it to get where I am now. I know I am, but there are still days where my mind tricks me and is like, no, you're a fraud. You didn't do shit, you know? Like, it's just because it could be a different industry doesn't necessarily mean that it would be a different outcome. Things could have gone faster. Like I said, if we made money faster, then the imposter syndrome could have came faster. Or if it took longer, maybe I would not have stuck through it all the way, or the imposter syndrome would be delayed, or stuff like that. I mean, I've told you there were several times where Jess had to talk me off a ledge, not physically, but like from quitting, from backing off the business and being like, I can't handle it, because a little bit of the imposter syndrome started and some of the old stuff that was going on too, where she's like, just breathe, you know, nothing major is happening.
Right, it's all in your head.
It's all in your head, which it is. It's your mind playing tricks on you. And if you want to start a business and you have anxiety, go for it. Maybe don't go crazy and start taking out loans for stuff. What I would say, if you're in a bigger metropolitan area, I'm not saying like New York, Chicago, LA, even a little bit smaller. If you've got Uber or Lyft, DoorDash, start with that. Be an independent contractor, see what it is to set your own schedule, make your own money, figure out how to kind of do your accounting with that. And then that gives you a good footprint or blueprint into what it is to be on the worker side. So if you know the worker side of it, then if you want to transition into the business side of it, you have a better connection with your workers, and it'll give you that leg up.
See, and literally you just said kind of what I wanted to say, and that's why I was asking you, do you think that would have been different if you started in a different industry? And you literally just kind of answered yes, even though you said no earlier. But here, let me kind of elaborate what I mean. Because, okay, so within the software industry, that's a tough business. And you kind of touch base that me and Vivek were kind of doing most of it. But let's say you started in an industry like home cleaning or even mobile car washing. You technically just said what I was kind of leaning towards. I was saying, okay, start in a business. I'm not there. Vivek's not there. You're just starting by yourself. And now you are going to get your first customer. You're going to go and detail their car. You're going to make some money, right? That is completely different, right? You think at that moment, because it's the same thing in my eyes as you just described Uber and Lyft. You're getting your feet kind of wet.
Sure. But you're saying in an instant, I kind of skipped the part where you said go and start like the business right away and be the business owner and the worker. I'm saying before you even do that, right? Instead of me being like, I'm going to use King of Maids as an example. Before I'm going to go start my King of Maids and be the first worker for it, I'm going to go find a King of Maids that's already there, apply, work for them, and kind of know the ins and outs and make the money first and kind of figure that stuff out, and then go into, okay, now I'm going to start my own thing.
And then you would start like a home cleaning
and then I would
business
start
slowly, which makes sense because that's what, I mean, a lot of people do. They go in, work for at that time it's not a competitor, but it turns into a competitor later once you decide to start a business and compete with them. But yeah, they learn the ins and outs, and then they kind of start, their own business. So that makes sense. But
I'm also not saying to go snake out a competitor. I'm not saying go get hired by,
you make some money
go make some money,
in the industry that you're already going to kind of.
And this kind of goes back into a previous episode we talked about where all these flipping gurus are pushing. Grant Cardone is like, you're down to your last $1,000. Are you going to buy my course where I teach you and tell you everything? And if you say no, you're crazy. If you say yes, you're insane. To me, if you are dealing with what I'm dealing with and you go and give your last money to a guy like that who is magically going to give you all the you're going to be in a way worse position once your money is gone.
Oh, absolutely. But see, like, this whole topic is basically kind of touching base on being low. The people that usually do that are at their very lowest, right? Mm-hmm. They think that this is such a solution for them that they're going to believe it and they're going to pay $1,000. And how many people are actually going to succeed versus how many are going to fail? Like, that's a huge.
And don't get me wrong, I was in that position. I was believing those people. That's why I think they're all scumbags. Because 1 out of 100 is actually gonna truly care about you. And 99 are going to not.
For sure.
They're all just gonna be like, once the credit card is swiped or the check is sent or the cash is handed over, here's the information that I already pre-made. F off, leave me alone.
Right.
But the one that cares is going to give you the information. And if you question it, they'll either clear it up or be like, you know what, maybe that is a fault in my program and I'll fix it, right? But most of the time, they don't want to hear that. Those gurus, they are the masters and you are the whoever, the ants in their colony that are just
yeah, I mean,
working
most
for
of them do see you like that. I mean, you even read some of the tweets that they're posting, like, don't like listen to anybody that's below you or something. Like, there was one I saw that from a huge guy, like, come on, like, you don't want to be saying that kind of stuff publicly, but whatever. So you're saying that if someone has anxiety, and we're talking extreme anxiety, right? We're not talking just little bit of anxiety, which you believe everybody has, right?
Anybody can take this information and it could help them. One big thing is don't go into hopping in extremes on anything because that's never good in really any scenario. Go up until a point where it starts to make you uncomfortable, because if you're still comfortable doing some things, it's going to take you a lot longer to make some changes. You got to be slightly uncomfortable with things to start making a change.
Right. And I mean, I do agree with you, because I think the difference with us and a lot of people that are preaching things online is that they have a specific audience that they want to get and target. And they want to say that, okay, you're going to pay $1,000 for my course and you're going to get rich, because they're banking on that specific person that is going to go through that advice, go to that extreme, and then if it's good advice, which it's not even good advice, then they'll want you to go through something else and the cycle goes on. We're basically talking to the people, the 99% of the people, at least 90% of them, that are not like that, that have issues, that are going to quit basically if they start a business, because there's so many different like audiences out there, and I feel like.
And here's the thing. That's one thing that I'll agree with. What I've been seeing a lot of recently on social is it's better to start and quit than be scared to even start and not try at all. That for sure. Even if you go one day and give it 12 hours or 2 days and give it 10 hours each day and then quit on the third day, you are still 12 or the 20 hours into learning more than you were if you didn't start. And you can take whatever you learned in that time and put it into your next idea. And then you could get a little bit further. keep working every day to a point where you can keep that consistency.
Right. And what I was saying, because you're saying that you shouldn't take things to an extreme and do it so quickly, right? Kind of more of like start gradually do little bit by little, right? And I feel like I am the complete opposite. I am that person that you're describing,
100%.
right? Be that extreme, going at a full out speed, right? But I also think that I am not, there isn't that many people that are like me. There's only one every few, I don't know what you would even put it, right?
That also, I feel like our dynamic balances each other out perfectly, because if, let's say, we were both the same way in your sense, where it was so extreme, we would be butting heads with ideas too, because there are times where you have an idea where it might be completely differently because you were doing, 12 hours straight of research into something and you're like, that's not going to work. Now we're going to go this way. Whereas if I'm the same way and we end up going two opposite directions, well, now we're butting heads and it's going to be a lot harder. Whereas with me, I'm like, okay, let's just try it and see. But if we were both the same as me, where it's like, kind of go with the flow, it's the same thing. You're both like almost too nonchalant about it. And it's like not gonna get much done either, because you're like, well, we'll try this or we'll try that. Whereas one balances the other out, like I said. Not to say that I'm like, I just agree with whatever you say, because if there's things that I don't, then I
Right.
speak up and I say it. But having two people that would be like you in that sense, or the opposite, two like me.
I mean, I think it would be fine. It just, we would have to be in different departments. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I think that's how you make it work. And then, some
if there
things
was
you
no
have to.
overlap.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay to have a little overlap at that point. I mean, it's never to say that I'm right or you're wrong. You just have to kind of come into terms where it's like, okay, if that happens, what do? You flip a coin or whatever and figure things out that way, which I don't think that's a big deal either. I think that could also be a pro. You just would have to go into different departments. And I think that it is the best way to kind of do it,
Also touches a little bit what we were talking before the episode started, when we were talking about sports. If you got two alphas on a team or three alphas on a team, and they were like very marketable, showboaty kind of people, like, we agree you're going to have turmoil on that team, and they're all going to be, they want to be the one. It's not
Right.
great.
Right. It's not great for sure. I agree with that. So, so going back to, I guess, business, final advice that you would give for someone that's either starting solo or starting with a partner? Which one would be better maybe for someone that deals with anxiety, things
In
like
either
that?
aspect, if you're going solo or with a partner, rely on other people. Know that you cannot and you will not be the best at everything. Yeah, as a business owner, you wear a lot of hats. If you have a partner or partners, that is easier to divide out. If you're solo, you are wearing those hats, but rely on others, especially when it comes to this anxiety portion. It's all right to like talk about it. People are going to be like, you're weak, this and that. Ignore that. Those are people that you don't want their advice anyways, because if they are dealing with it, they're not open about it and they can't help you. If they're not dealing with it, then they can't resonate with you and they're not going to help you. Lean on people, find people, even if it's like 2, 3, 4 close people, rely on them and just vent if you need to. If they let you, do it. Here's another thing. If there are toxic people in your life, no matter who it is, friend, family, you got to work on boundaries And if they still don't respect those boundaries, like giving them boundaries with you, telling them, how much they can kind of give to you to push your buttons. If they don't respect those, you got to cut them out, which I have done personally with a family member.
And it's not easy, but it has to be done.
It's hard. I still deal with it. So it is extremely hard, but in the long run, you are the only one living your life. You got other people who rely on you, whether it's a spouse or a significant other, or if you have kids at this point, but you are still living your life. So you got to do what's best for yourself to keep going and keep fighting and to succeed in your personal life and in your business.
Yeah, and that's why we did that couple episodes back with business versus job, because for some people, especially when they're dealing with anxiety, having a job might be a way better option, right? Especially if you're going to choose a business where you're in front of a computer and not talking to anybody, which again goes back to like your story and going into the hardest industries, hardest things that you can do, because we were in a small room when we started in the kitchen, not seeing anybody. That's horrible for a person going through what you were going through, right? So it's like you could put yourself in different, easier situations, I would say, than making it so hard on yourself. So if for some people, a job might be completely easier. But then I guess I will ask one more question before we end. Now, see if based on what we're talking about at this moment, someone would take this as, I am going to take the easier option, right? So if you were listening to me 6 years ago or 8 years ago, whenever we started, I maybe would convince you to get a job and go in that direction. But now sitting here today, would that be the wrong decision? Do you regret where you are at now? Or
I can't change the past. I don't regret the path that I took because it shaped me to who I am now. And it's given me lessons to now pass on to my kids that I want them to grow up to be good freaking human beings and not shitty people. And that's the thing. If I did find somebody who is this candid and open, like we are with this topic, and I heard it back then before we, right before we started, I probably would. I probably would go and get a job just because I know that I could still start going forward. And there's no right and wrong here. If you go and start the business right away and fail, that's fine. That's fine. Ignore the people laughing at you. How many times did I come to you saying in the beginning that my family was very against me going this route, And now they kind of call and ask certain things at times, But if it was back then, I don't think that, if somebody's debating on the fence right now, start a business or start a new job or keep their job, whatever you decide is the best decision because you're making it for you. Nobody else is living your life.
And that's exactly what I get from this ending and from your experience, that no matter what you do at the end, it's going to be okay.
Absolutely. 100%.